one of them, and it's in the files.
So thank you, councillors, again for attending the update from the Pines. I'll let the Pines introduce themselves. Probably know everyone that's here today. But Andrew Riggs, I'll give the floor to you to start with to welcome and updates on the project. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you, Kieran. Thanks, everyone. As usual, we appreciate the chance to come and speak to you and give you an update on the project. It's a really invaluable opportunity for us to take questions and also answer the ones. And thank you for the submission of the written questions. It's always a great format. The team endeavored to get them back, which we'll go through be able to go through today. Joanne's going to give a update first on the project, on some of the things we've been doing over the last 3 months. And towards the end, I'll come back and we'll talk about some of the next steps on commercial matters, on DPAs, and we discuss rates if you like, those sorts of things. I'll leave it to Joanne.
Thanks. I'll go through this. So on the quarterly project update, which is slide 3, so we've now completed a full year of bird and bat studies, which is great. So every season has been covered and we've still got a full year to go, of course. So all seasons from winter onwards. We're continuing to meet with private infrastructure hosts, so interested landowners who are interested to host infrastructure on their properties. We've now had over 4,300 interactions to date, so that's up 500 since last time. So we are continuing to meet with community members and groups. And we've hit a big milestone with our community sponsorships with $100,000 now going to different community initiatives, and some pictures throughout the slides will show what they are, but I've also got a separate slide talking about what the latest round has gone towards. And now, of course, the round 5 is open with the deadline of 31st of August. So again, more opportunities for community groups to apply. We've provided $25,000 now in electricity bill credits. So community is once again welcome, obviously, to submit their electricity bill for their $100 credit if they are in the Oberon LGA and a few suburbs out in the Bathurst LGA. And Glenn, who's with us today as well, is working on the Legacy project, as you know. So committee applications are still open there. And the draft terms of reference was shared with you back in April. So you can talk about that.
Just one question with the quarterly project update. There's been a number of dates mentioned in the past when the map would be provided, and then we have no clarity regarding Trunky Creek in, Trunky Creek out, and there's the residents down there saying it's in. So have we got a date we can sort of let you know for the map?
We haven't got a specific date yet, but over the next few months, we're looking to update you on it. Okay. So on that, on the next slide or next page, you will see a bit of an overview of our timeline to date, which shows that on the top line is more about the approvals matters, on the bottom is the community benefit matters. So the first submission to the state is going to be the scoping report, which will be in Q4 this year. And so then we get issued CEAs from the government. So they specifically tell us what to look for in our detailed assessments. So that's issued then a month or so later. And then we are looking to commence our detailed assessments to then submit our EIS later next year. So that's the timeline that we are working towards. Of course, then beyond that, the approvals phase is a little bit unknown, but we would estimate based on the dates here that is roughly the timeline. And you can see on the bottom slide, is on the bottom of the arrow as well, the associated benefits that the community is eligible for. So importantly, the ones that we're doing now, you're aware of, and then start of construction, all the bigger funding rounds commence.
So negotiation of a VPA, when would that be taking place in that time?
Well, we'd like to discuss starting that when you're ready. Yeah. We've got a draft that's in hand.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So in terms of the next page, some other updates. We've got a community hub that's going to open in the next couple of months. So that's just on the main street of Oberon. So in the meantime, we currently have a room booked in the library every Tuesday from 10 to 2. So community members can drop in the meantime while our works are being completed at 133 Oberon Street. And again, it will be an opportunity for community to come in more regularly, come and meet with team members, submit their electricity bill, talk to us, provide feedback, get help with applications for sponsorships. So that the actual opening days will still be advertised, but for now we're in Oberon once a week,
Sorry, Tuesdays when?
10 to 2.
So is it proposed that when the hub is established at 133, that'll only be open on that Tuesday, or is it going to be open?
It will be a few days a week.
Yeah.
We just haven't advertised what those days are.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, the intention is more than 1 day a week. Yeah. So on the next page, I've just got an overview of some of the programs we've supported in the last round of sponsorship. So reaching that $100,000 milestone. Notably, obviously, the Oberon Netball Club, which has been able to re-establish after COVID. And then we've got an arts program out west for intergenerational art, Black Springs Community Association with the mobile phone service that they're looking to install to provide better reception. Galloping Gumnut Mobile Children's Service, so promoting bike safety. The Oberon Showground land managers, and restoration of an old church. So a whole variety, and we appreciate obviously the applications. So it's been a good variety of different things to sponsor. Do you have any questions on that? Otherwise, hand over to you.
Thank you.
So I guess the two items that I want to try and address today, one matter of discussion over the last couple of months. As we've always understood, rates are payable. Project is quite happy actually to be able to contribute to the rate base. At this point in time, we don't have a DA, therefore we don't have the land perfectly identified. So in the usual course of events, we wouldn't be talking about rates in any of our developments until we're actually starting to construct and know what we construct, and then the lease and or permits that we might have under that DA.
The problem is we would like to ask the valuer general to come to Oberon to be able to have a meaningful discussion with the VG. And to be able to do that, we would at least like to know, and they've offered to come.
Yes.
From discussions I've had, I think of the the country mayors, I think it was, and they're very willing to come to Oberon. But one of the issues, until we can get a sort of an indication of a delineated area, it's very hard to have a meaningful discussion.
Yeah, it's like chicken and egg there, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know how to solve that, Mayor, other than to say when we have a DA, but normally when we engage with the grading process, we'd hire a valuer to do that work. You have to work out exactly the land, the rates to apply, and then.
Well, you'd have a surveyor who'd survey it.
Correct.
And then for the valuer general, because they work out the land value, would have to be, they would be assessing that once they know the delineated area that is for that.
Yeah,
As I understand it.
Yeah, and we just, at the moment, we haven't even submitted a Sears, so I think it's gonna fall on deaf ears a little bit with the valuer general in terms of, because they don't have anything to see at the moment, if I can say it that way.
And look, I'll deal with it when it comes to questions, but obviously there are issues about, you know, the cabling and everything, that whether it's subject to a permit or whether it's an easement, or I don't know if you know the answers to those questions. We'll get to that later.
I certainly don't.
Right.
Some of the other councils might be able to assist in this because there's a few projects that have
They
gone
are.
down the track.
They are, but the question delineating
Yeah,
the
no, I
area
understand.
of pine forest is a unique
Yeah.
situation.
What I'm saying is they may be a year earlier than us and have the valuer general come up and in terms will get us more of a clarity on structure and things then.
Yes, and we're certainly seeking that, yeah.
Yeah, we certainly are ready to start that process when we
Good, yeah.
have the information we can have.
And with the rates, that doesn't form part of the community benefit package, does it?
No, and indeed, the communication we gave 6 weeks or so ago was intended to So the community benefits package is in addition to whatever rates may be.
Right.
That's right. Certainly, on that topic, and maybe we can just discuss briefly the VPA, we don't think we'd be discussing rates in that. We think rates are kind of a matter for the law and probably so. The VPA is by its nature voluntary and more commercial document between the parties.
So I'm assuming that what you put up as the community benefit fund, which Glenn is managing, will be separate from the VPA, but it's VPA and then there'll be rates.
Well, I think we've got a slide that can address that, maybe the next slide, I think. Yeah, I think, Sharon, we could. Thank you. Sheet here. So, basically, the entirety of this slide is VPA. And it steps intentionally through, so there's the guidelines as the first row. And that's what New South Wales government has set out as to be, the requirement for each project. Then on top of that, the next 3 rows, we've added to the project. We can do that because of its scale, the wind resource, the proximity to the existing transmission line allows the economics of the project to pay for those things. We are going one step further, and in our research at least, not too many VPAs are public, but some are. It's been a while since they've been made that way. We've proposed to you in the letter maybe 2 weeks ago that we would include those other obligations that we've made as a way to formalize them if they can. Until this point, they're a promise from the company on a commercial basis or on a community social license basis. But we think by adding those to the VPA, it'll give everyone more certainty as to the bona fides of them. And those things being the legacy fund, which Glenn is, as you say, is, and that's what the part I wanted to clarify here. The legacy fund, which Glenn is currently chairman of, is chairman of, not to change that. The affordable housing program, which we're doing in partnership with the not-for-profit Blue CHP, who you met in March. And then, and on top of that is electricity bill credit, which there's a lower version of it right now during the development. And then following construction and operation, it increases to 250 per year. And so we see those 3 things as community benefits that are over and above the New South Wales guidelines.
That can be $25 million worth of work.
On our numbers. So we gave some answers to, thank you for the questions. We gave some answers to some emailed exchange a while ago. Number of households in the LGA eligible, they all take it up, which we aren't really in control of, but we're trying to encourage people. Multiplied by the number of there because it is a CPI escalating fund.
I think in those letters, I think what I try to point out is that, if you look at them separately, the electricity benefit bill credit was totally overstated. It was based on everyone taking it up, and at the moment it's a very small take up. With the wind farm additional benefit, 100 affordable housing, we'd really need to see that before we understand the benefit. So even quoting that at this early stage is somewhat problematic, given what happened to Squadron out of Dubbo. And then the Pines Farm additional $5 million legacy fund, again, we've had no say in that. That's just been foisted on us in some ways. But I don't think, those comments you made that Pines are double New South Wales guidelines, and that's a bit, and the great windfall for Oberon and our strong commitment to sharing. I think those 3 statements are a little bit not in line with, the reality. So
I don't fall away from them, Councillor. I back them 100%.
I wouldn't think it would.
We've given you the if I can. Yeah. Right. We've given you all the calculations. Happy for you to point out where they're wrong. We have nothing to hide here. We're only trying to bring.
Well, you haven't given us all the calculations. With regard to the housing, we've got nothing to see whether what benefit there is there. So we've got nothing there with the electricity bill credit. It's based on a very small uptake, but you're saying everyone in the Oberon LGA is going to take it up. Well, I think that's problematic. And the last one I've talked about. So you haven't given us all the information.
And I'd speak to the legacy fund that's shared with Athens LGA as well, which I've raised before, that you actually stepping off into Trunty Creek and areas around there, which means that 5 million is not specifically over. It's going to that.
That's correct. Yeah, that's what we've said. Yeah.
So it shouldn't really be, this is your big play for us. You can talk to Bathurst Council about what they might get from it, but otherwise, over and above that 5 million, you've got something to give to Bathurst.
Correct, based on the number of turbines that end up in that council. Yeah. Thank you. That's a fair point. I can only say,
Before you go, I think.
oh, sorry.
No, I just want to be mindful that we're not attacking them. That's all.
Oh, I don't think anyone, sorry, Andrew.
Thanks. So, I guess there was a question that was raised, what are we offering over and above the, new civil law guidelines? We say what's on this slide illustrates that, and happy to, share any basic, any calculations or assumptions.
Are you going to put any battery storage in?
We are in the process of, securing, let's say, the right land for that, correct? That depends on the market at the time, whether it gets built. Most developments these days are giving themselves the option to do it. By the time we, New South Wales is on a pretty fast program of installing battery storage at the moment. We'll have a permit that allows for it, whether that actually gets built, come down to the market at the time, if we can be ready in time for the still capacity, the battery capacity needed.
So will you be paying $850 per megawatt
I
as
certainly would agree with that,
a
Mr. Mayor.
minimum per year?
We don't mind adding benefits. That's a very good point. We haven't included that one. And the only reason we haven't included it today is because we don't have the battery land secured, and so it'd be premature to make those claims, but when that happens, we'll update it.
And what about substations? Is anything payable in relation to the establishment of substations? Which I'm assuming you're going to need a substation per, at least per forage.
Yeah, it hasn't been my experience. I certainly have to pay a lot of money to build them. But it hasn't been my experience that they're part of the story. I think it's done based on the amount of capacity that's installed.
No, you go.
Sorry, Andrew, I just want to throw out there the $5 million for a legacy fund project or projects is one, in theory, is a great sugar hit for your community, and great sugar hit for Oberon, I would suspect, if that occurred. It's what is that project or projects that have additional and ongoing financial burden on the person who
You've well made that point.
I know I have. I just want to make it again in terms of once that sugar hit has been realised, what's the ongoing commitment, or is there an ongoing commitment from this legacy fund should that occur?
Through life support cost of that, of whatever you put in.
Can I try to explain how we've,
I might be able to help you. I can
get you a jumper.
We talked about,
Well,
Just
I think
employing.
we've had 5 or 6 meetings, but
yeah, we talked about that.
We've
funding
talked about this,
aspect.
talked about this. And rather than me say something again, or through the mayor say something, let me just put it in these terms. New South Wales Farmers President Xavier Martin, totally independent, up until recently, quite sort of standoff, right? Last week, the Community and Employment Benefit Program does not address the impacts being felt across regional New South Wales. It does not account for the loss of land value, the amenity, neighbouring properties that do not host infrastructure but wear the consequences. And it does not recognise the long-term operational and productivity costs imposed on farming businesses and where compulsory acquisition for guidelines for grid lines. These are not abstract concerns. They are measurable ongoing cost of farmers in the community. Compensation for long-term operational impacts to farming business and the loss of land values, mandatory minimum standards, and the compensation for impacts on neighbours, the developers and complexes, consistent arrangements. And then we go to, if you just bear with me, one last short statement. He's highlighting the problems we've been highlighting. That's the New South Wales Farmers President. And then if we move to Tony Marr, recently came out and said, what's the first one, sorry?
Tony Martin, journalist, I'm assuming you don't.
No, Tony,
Australian Energy.
Oh, Energy
Commissioner.
yeah. Australian Energy Commissioner.
Yes.
The New South Wales government has been accused of failing to adequately manage the impacts of large-scale renewable energy projects on regional communities following the strongly worded intervention of the Australian Energy Infrastructure Commissioner. It goes on, which you probably would have read, and at the bottom it says, Mr. Meyer has warned that inadequate consultation with affected communities and causing significant stress on residents while damage to local roads, heavy construction traffic have left councils facing multi-million-dollar repair bills. So again, after six, you've mentioned the VPA, but wow, there's so many things that we need to tie down before we even look at an VPA, and that's what we said 6 meetings ago. Okay?
Andrew, one of the things
Still
that,
waiting to answer Gary's question, but
Right.
when you're ready.
no, answer Gary's question.
So, in order to address that very real concern, we put together a draft terms of reference that we supplied to council. I think March, no, just after March, perhaps. I think Councillor Turnbeth, you had some particular governance concerns you wanted to address, and we all went with that. I think Councillor Tucker provided a few questions which we've answered. And so the way we've tried to address the issue of, let's say, capital works versus maintenance works is by creating a terms of reference that would take into account those things or require those on the community to take into account those things, including a reserve seat for both councils, in order to ensure that the 5 million is adequate for whatever was proposed. So if there was no maintenance works, wonderful, it can be capital, or if it was a mix. We've tried to put that into those draft terms of reference that we shared with you in order to address that concern. And then trust the people that are on that committee to provide the governance to make sure that your concern was addressed. So happy to take more questions in the terms of reference where it,
So one of the issues we've raised before is that this council are elected representatives of the community. That's why we're on this council. So to have a separate organisation where people to that committee are appointed, and I know that these terms of reference specify selection criteria, but ultimately, who says whether they're on or not? I'm assuming that's Glenn as the chairman.
happy to take suggested improvements in the governance.
My question is, and we did raise this, I know I wasn't, well, I had some difficulties with getting on for the last meeting, but I think it was the meeting before, to say, why is this legacy fund not operated by the council on the basis that we are the elected representatives of this community? We probably, from our involvement with our technical staff and with others, have a better understanding from an overarching point of view, total council area, what is required.
Sorry, don't want to fall over here while we're talking. Sorry.
He was doing.
Did I have that impact?
No, he was doing.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Shoelace up.
It was Jenny flexing, that's what.
WHS,
It's a strategy, it's a strategy.
It's
a negotiating
the
strategy.
deflection.
I had one of those on the weekend.
I don't agree that council should have control of a separate one. A VPA, yes, not the other one.
Sorry, but I'm asking a question.
So this is the same answer I gave on previous occasions, but I think we didn't have the benefit of this slide to help frame it. And maybe the background. So the first one on this, the New South Wales guidelines is entirely managed by the New South Wales guidelines, being
Yes.
council administered.
And this is outside that.
And the three below it, we've created these to address possibly other stakeholders in the community that might benefit from those. And coming into a community, you have multiple stakeholders that you have to speak to and address in various ways. If we thought that by having those separately administered, one through like, for example, the housing, through ourselves and through our own methods, but accountable to the community. And then this one being, of course, through the normal program guidelines. And if I can just say, just before I answer your question, is, this is quite usual. Every place we go, we're not proposing something here that is unusual. We have community benefit. We got in Victoria. We just funded a Telstra tower nearby, partially funded it together with the government and Telstra. And, it wasn't managed through the council, but the council certainly told us what some of their priorities were, and we went out and allocated the money. So it's quite usual. We think council administered, project administered.
So thanks, Andrew. So we haven't got very far because I think it was only the second meeting. The mayor reached out to a number of councils in reses. I reached out to a number of councils. And without exception, each one said the best way to do it is through the council. And we brought that back to you and said the best way to do this, as advised by other councils in our state, is for the council to administer it. And was on deaf ears. So we've got nowhere with that. And we're not doing it because we're saying any other than we're taking advice that this is the best way to manage those funds.
Can I just say, I ran the council in Victoria where the Golden Plains. I actually spoke to some councillors down there and it's going really well how you support that community. I've got a cousin that actually lives down there. But the point of the matter is, I don't, and I totally disagree with what the Mayor and Councillor O'Connor think. I think there needs to be a separation where other funds are dealt with by other bodies other than council, so it's not just councils designating money. And I do believe that other outside entities should have a say.
Thank you, Councillor Hayden. I'll give you the names.
I don't need,
No, excuse me.
but you like to shut me down all the time, Frank. The fact is,
Councillor Hayden.
I don't need you to.
Councillor Russell to apply, yes.
I was just saying, I'll give you the
Councillor
names
Connor.
for these councils that you can contact in New South Wales.
I
and
have
get the
quite
same
a few
advice.
contacts that I can speak
Excuse me.
to. I don't want him talking at me
Or not?
So I'll just finish.
because
Right,
I said,
Councillors, let's move on. Okay.
So I maybe just one suggestion to help. It might have been that the communication was about the New South Wales guidelines amount, which is the bigger and more material amount here.
No, it's about exactly what we're talking about here,
So,
the legacy fund.
So I note you've put one councillor on from Oberon Council and one from Bathurst Council to be on this community fund as basically permanent representatives. How many people are not going to be on this?
it's all set out in the terms of reference. I mean, I think the logical way forward is for anyone to make suggestions to that terms of reference, things you'd like to see. And if one of those things was that the council is to have the deciding vote of hearing some of the views, feed that back to us in a written form, we can take it on board. I agree with you. We've discussed this over and over. We've attempted to do it through the written form in terms of reference.
5 to 7 people and for, what is it, 12 months or something? For 24 months.
While they're being, while it's being established.
Can I just to buy this up a little bit, is that, so councils work under a strategic footprint called IPNR.
Yes.
So it's our integrated planning and reporting processes where the community have told us over the next 20 years what their ambitions and what their wants and needs are. And they have to meet a certain criteria. Just a comment to take to whichever way this goes is that council, or certainly local council laws, have been elected by their community and they auspice the wants and needs under the community strategic plan. In all the documentation that you provided in that terms of reference, the CSP has not been mentioned once. IPNR doesn't get mentioned, and all I suggest
to come back to us.
all I would suggest is that, Andrew, you sort of know where I am at this point in time because I'm wading through conversations with you, conversations with my council, where that sits, which makes it. I don't want to muddy a very clear process that you've led. And I want to just advise that should be one of the primary drivers behind anything in this, especially if you want to integrate the community into that. That's sort of where is all I wanted to say.
Um, okay. Well, so we would welcome back more comments to the draft. So I guess the first, in our sending the draft, it was to elicit those comments. And you can appreciate from our side, it's much easier if you bring us back those in written form.
I'll go back to it. If you're rolling it up into the VPA, it is part of the VPA. And maybe you've done something different in other areas. Why would you not consider a different model for the legacy fund in this LGA?
We're, it's something we won't consider, Councillor. We've done it this way because we want to be able to control a little bit of where the directivity is of some of the funds to constituencies that might not be the same as what the council wants. I'm just saying it in plain English.
That's
Right.
correct,
So you're
because
saying 9
So-
people around the table elected wouldn't do the right thing for the whole of the LGA when that.
No,
I agree with that.
We're gonna rely on them to actually, sorry, you're referring to this council, sorry.
Yeah.
We're not saying that at all. We're saying there's a New South Wales guideline that will be administered through that process.
Mm.
And these are commercial things that our company has put forward to assist the
But you're still
community.
rolling it up into the same thing.
Yeah.
It's not sitting outside, it's sitting within.
Yeah, and the drafts that we propose, we have when we discuss that, is that it will set out the governance for the two separate parts. And in one simple way, the simplest of ways, the terms of, and we propose this, the terms of reference probably stays the same. The only difference is where the same group, it's an agreeable group, would make a recommendation to council. Council has the appropriate authority to make a decision where the first row goes. But then in respect of matters for the $5 million one, it would be sent to the project for decision, but the same group could
But if
probably
that-
consider all
if that
opportunities.
Project, that through the life of the project, you're going to impact the council for the ongoing costs, then it really needs to be considered by council.
Well, certainly council would have their representative on that to make that clear to the group.
But that could be voted, we can be,
Voted out.
voted out.
Listen, it doesn't make
That's
sense. I don't know have you ever looked at how we run financially? But we don't have many ratepayers to pay for things and projects don't get up because of the on-costs that may occur.
Sports complex, libraries, we have to look at the through line.
You can tick it off and say, aren't we wonderful, slap ourselves on the back, and we get this wonderful new piece of infrastructure, then you walk away. The ratepayers here will have to pay
The
for the
project,
ongoing costs.
the project will be here for 30 years.
You may not be.
Oh, granted, but the obligations for
Look,
that is
everyone
created.
sitting around this room saying, oh, we're here for the life of the project. You
So-
can work for another company.
So
All
Andrew,
of you could. It's just your job.
I'm a little confused. You're saying putting up this $5 million legacy fund. So let's say, the community group decides a new museum to be built. For instance, we know one of our neighbouring council already has concerns about the number of museums and has in the upkeep of those museums. Are you going to say that for the next 30 years, as well as providing the 5 million upfront, you're going to pay for the maintenance of the gardens, the maintenance of the buildings, the maintenance of the exhibitions and everything in that museum? My understanding, I'm saying correct?
Anything decided to, so just wind it back a little bit. So we're proposing to build, multi-billion-dollar project that has costs for their capital and operating. Yeah, so if we were to make a decision on these relatively small projects at 5 million, that it required an ongoing contribution. The only way the project would actually be sanctioned by ourselves as the project would be is if it was fully funded in one way or another. So for example, if you found a $5 million thing that this group wanted, but required additional money, we'd have to take that on board before we sanctioned it. We would not be able to build that museum without a business case and a funding strategy for it. It certainly wouldn't automatically fall to council, depending what it was.
So can I
But
just,
you wouldn't come to us and say, hey, this is what we think it'll work, here's the funding. We don't
If it was
really
fully
get-
costed, I mean, but that's what we do, councillor, with respect, right? We do,
But you can understand where I'm coming from on this, because it's a big cost to our ratepayers. It's not a gift.
for example, in the terms of reference,
Hmm.
we could include a term that said, you know, it addressed your very concerns. That's why we shared that document.
We don't have any problem with new projects so much, because we do need those, we need that sort of funding. But we have to be financially,
100%.
you know, secure in the decision to make sure that we're not going for a rate variation in a couple of years.
And that's what the terms of reference should carry.
Yeah, and we have a resolution, I believe, on our own that says for any new projects, we have to look at the through life costing.
We haven't
I
seen.
just,
We shared it with Gary, the councillor.
Every council,
Councillor Tucker.
we send it out to you as soon as it arrives.
It was only a few days after our last meeting, because I know.
He also provided it on the day.
Annuity as part of the project, will be an annuity to cover maintenance and.
Well, for example, if there was a project that needed maintenance, we would have to cost that in and make it available.
Well, the trouble with most of these things, as you know, Andrew, as the building or whatever it is, whether it's playing fields, buildings, as they get older, the maintenance costs go up.
Yeah, indeed, and if we were to take on that project, we'd have to cost it in, frankly, our entire wind farm project, but all of the money.
You have to do the same with your wind farm project. The maintenance costs go up as they get older. I realise that, yes.
Just to tie it up, because I think we could be caught in this. Would that sit outside the $5 million legacy fund, or would it be part of the legacy fund? So if a building was to be 2 million, but you needed 30 divided by 3 million, let's say 100,000 a
5
year.
million is the value for all of it.
Yes.
And we'd have to evaluate, you know, both elements of it, so make sure there's enough money.
Yeah, so it's within the package.
Yes.
I asked a question just following on from the risk analysis. So you just sort of stated that you may not be here in 30 years' time.
I don't think I said that, but
Or something to that effect.
I think the councillor did.
Okay, you're here in 30 years. Okay, so so you won't sell the thing, so will forestry get any legacy from the sale of the project? So you can't say that you're going to be here in 30 years' time. But if you sell on the project, how is forestry going to benefit from that?
Forestry is a
Have you got
host.
that in legislation or in your contract?
Forestry is a host landowner for us.
Mhm.
And like any host landowner, they get paid a lease value or lease or permit or whatever we call it. They get paid an amount to host the infrastructure. And that's and there's details that go with that, but that's essentially the deal. They are not an equity investor in the project.
So,
Can I just for council's benefit, if a project gets approved, regardless if TAG owned it or Squadron owned it or someone else, the approval goes with the lead. So should TAG decide to sell it, the conditions of consent or any of the other parameters that sit within that project will have to be absorbed by either a new owner or in retrospect by the previous owner. So regardless of whether a current developer moves on it, and then I'll put it back in simple terms, you build a house and then you go and sell that house, the rates and all that sort of stuff stay with that house. You don't continue to pay the rates on that because you're not the owner. It goes with the land in which it's on. So forestry as the landowner will be the owner. And if they sell or there is some sort of shift away from that,
They're like the real estate agent. They manage it and get the fee.
they're still the
crowd.
They're the landlord.
Yeah,
In this analogy, they're a landlord.
yes, they are.
So they own or manage the property.
They manage it. They don't own it. That's the problem.
Yeah.
I just wanted to clear that.
And also, I'm sure Gavin, I'm sure Forestry Corporation will have in their agreement with Stromlo TAG that there are certain things, certain obligations. If they want to sell it, they probably have to go to forestry for consent, and there has to be certain of the obligations carried forward to any
I didn't want to
new
get
owner.
that deep. It was just more,
That was the.
That would be
the
correct,
point of my
Mr.
question
Chairman,
that we
not
had.
disclosing anything confidential.
No,
That's the point of the question. Thank you.
That's it. So Rob's question's appropriate. Look, we're not investors in the wind farm.
No.
We're just loving it down. So if a wind farm reps, doesn't matter who it is, if they sell that on to another group, they buy that, and the conditions of that consent to Gary's stays with them.
That's right.
And the agreement between the project and forestry stays the same.
And any host.
Robin approved.
Anyways.
Just in an effort to try to wrap up this EPA discussion, and, you know, given Xavier Martin's discussion, I'd encourage you to read that, but I'll also encourage you to just go back over what Gary has said. At the moment, we're a long way apart. We need to do a lot of work on a lot of issues we've been raising over the last 6 meetings. But I would stress, go back over what Gary's remarks are, because unless we move forward, we're just going nowhere with
We
this.
certainly would encourage your responses back on the terms of reference.
Well, we've been doing that for 5 meetings, and you, with respect, I mean, you say, come back with, we've just gone through them again. I've just quoted the head of the New South Wales farmers stating the same thing. I mean, I can't say it more, you know, clearly to you. Please listen to what Gary has said, and you get back to us, please.
I think we put it in writing,
I'm happy to,
Thank you.
put it in writing, and address it.
Thank you. And so before we leave BPA, I get a chance to plug our good performance here, councillor. Putting those 3 line items into the BPA is best practice. It's over and above what I've seen elsewhere in the market. It's our commitment to Oberon that we actually will stand behind those commitments that we've made. And on the numbers, it objectively shows we're more than double the rate that New South Wales is proposing, and any objective calculation that we've built. So by putting them in, now we've put the VPA, a draft offer letter VPA to very recently. Behind that sits a draft VPA. We're finishing one down in Narrandera Council at the moment. And the draft offer letter we sent.
Yeah.
Matthew, I think, sent it through a couple of days ago with my signature, a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, Matthew Parton sent through. It's two pages. It sets out that being in the document. A number of the parts and pieces.
Who was it sent to? Council, to me?
No, it was you two.
Right.
Is that the one dated 30th of April?
No, that's much more recent than that. So if you find from that, it was sent through, probably getting that sent it. I signed it before I went holidays. So assuming it's there, just take it as rote at the moment. The idea behind that is we'll put all of that in the VPA, not just the first one, but all of it to make the commitment. We do leave open in the full document exactly how that governance will work, and take on board your comments today. We think the document could use the same group, just with the final deciding body being different. That's our position. Let's say it doesn't have to be that way, but that's our position. We think for the reasons I've described, it works. And we're happy to send the full draft form of the VPA to you shortly. It's a pretty simple document.
Maybe we start with that first one when we do get to see it and come back with some responses.
Yeah, just if you can find Joe that it's actually gone. I don't know if we're online. Matthew should be watching us if we're online. If Matt Parton's online. We're recording
It's a
it.
town hall. I can't tell who's online.
Oh, I see. Okay. Now, just one point, there's been a bit of conflation between rates and VPAs, and we might be guilty of that a little bit too, in our response to you back in April. We don't see the VPA as the home, if you will, of rate discussions. We think they're outside of the VPA. So we're all on the same page on that. That's a good start. We think the VPA is really about what, at the moment, is what's on this page. And we're happy we've got a full long form that we can send through as well, but we just sent through the 2-pager recently to start that process. Okay, and I think that's probably the end of our update per se, but we're happy to go through the formal questions that we received, if you like. Always stand here in the public square and take all questions.
So if I could ask you and or Gavin, you saw the letter, and I know you said you can't, haven't got the areas delineated for which the permits apply around the structures. But on a philosophical, or not a philosophical, but on a principle idea, Forestry Corporation or yourselves must have a view as to obviously the area under which substations are constructed, rateable. Is it subject to a permit?
I have to just take that on notice because it may well be owned by Transgrid in the end. And I'm not expert in that space.
So are there areas where underground power cables run between turbines subject to easements or permits? Again, there must be some clarification. I mean,
we don't look at it this early in the process. I apologize.
Forestry Corporation has to look at it this early. They need to know what they're going to be paid for as permits.
Yeah, so I can provide some guidance, I guess, on that. Do you mind if I come up?
Yeah, no, we don't. And that's why the original question was sent to you on this. Yes.
Michael, sit down, Kathy, as well. On your last point, Mr. Mayor, if I can, so again, the payment nature doesn't have to rely on square meters between us. Just to put that on the table for you, there's other ways we can derive payment structures. So having to know exactly the land area is not necessary in order for us to have a commercial agreement. We know the land.
But in order for us to understand what us as a council, and you've said it, you've looked at your VPA, you've kind of said you've got your VPA side, and you've said the rates area is separate. We need to know what we're likely to obtain rates on, and that's why I've arranged for the valuer general code. Because in negotiating a VPA, on one hand, we also need to know, although they're separate, we also know what potential revenue we are going to obtain from rates. That depends on what is rateable. That also depends on under what rate category it goes. There are a whole lot of things we need to look at. And
I'd only suggest that the VPA does not depend on rates. They're
I just said that.
No.
Yeah.
I've said we separate, but we need
We
to
need to
know.
let Gavin.
Yeah,
Gavin
and
take the
Gavin.
floor. You'd make a good councillor, Gavin, sitting there.
I don't know, but but thanks for the invitation to speak. Yeah, look, rateability is something that I've raised from the start. Lauren, you and I've had an initial conversation here, I don't know, I can't remember if it's 3 or 4 years ago, the other day.
Yeah.
And it was around the time, thanks, Kate, it was around the time that I first brought the prospect to council. And you asked the question, and I will paraphrase this absolutely. It was, are the areas that would be used for the infrastructure, are they rateable? And I said yes. And again, to paraphrase, you were disappointed with that. There might have been some other words used, but they were appropriate words. And then we had subsequent conversations around what the investigation area was. And we spent some time on the phone, you might recall too. We explored what other areas were looking at in terms of what they were nominating in EIS around the size of the prospect. And the concept here was adding up all the area around the boundary of the wind farm itself. And there was correspondence, of course, between us along those lines. What I also shared too was that the Forestry Act allows for 0.7% of the softwood estate to be able to be used for renewable energy. And that softwood proportion is 1,672 hectares. Now that's for all the projects. So there are 5 of those across the state. A proportion of that land, ultimately, we're as interested as everyone else to see what the actual footprint's going to be. A proportion of that will be with the Pines project. So for each of the local government areas, and Andrew, I think I'm going to go 7 off the top of my head, it might be 8, between them all, in the south at Bondo, the west at Orange, here at Sunny Corner, here at
Mine Creek, etc.
Yeah, Orange, that's the way, thank you. A proportion of that area will need to be assessed for rates here. Now that, I don't have that number off the top of my head, but that's the context of it. Now already we issue a range of permits across the whole of the state forest area for other uses. Now that could be for anything for grazing, for example. We often let out areas for grazing in our forests. But we also lease it out for things like telecommunications towers, Optus, Telstra, Vodafone. The telecommunications as well for TV. So they are also rateable as well. And so it's not the whole lot in DP that might be used. It's the section there that's actually used for the permit. We have previously provided council with the area used by the Pines for weather monitoring here. And Damien, I've sent you an update today, which actually shows the how much area is being used for the weather monitoring equipment. It's not very much. It's only 6 hectares, and this is exactly the point you raised before, Lauren, as well, which was it's not the whole state forest. It's just what's only used.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that.
But that doesn't get that still doesn't answer the question. You must have an idea for each of the wind towers, what area you're going to survey off as being permittable. I mean, you must have an idea of that. You must have an idea as to whether, if substations are located within the forest, as to what area around a substation is going to be surveyed as permittable, and the underground power lines that will go, and maybe even tracks, are they going to be subject to an easement? I don't know if an easement's permissible under the Forestry Act, or whether everything has to be by way of permit. So are they going to be permit?
It works in reverse, and so
Sorry,
it works in reverse. And so the concept here is that each of the proponents has been given an area that they have to work within that totals up to that no more than 1,672. So if they come and say we're going to put in X number of turbines and a substation and all that sort of stuff, it has to fit within that footprint.
So
that's like that. It's working it back.
so is a permit required to put an underground cable in? So is the area got to be permitted? So if you've got a wind tower there and you've got a wind tower there within the forest, you're running an underground cable, probably 600 down below the surface, right? You put that in. Is that area, the area under which that cable, is that permittable, or is that under some other arrangement?
Is it exclusive use? So the part of that is we don't know the answers to that yet, but the concept here is it exclusive use? So if you put a telecommunications tower there in the forest, you put a fence around it, no one else can use it.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. And if we look at that telecommunications tower and it goes to a power pole, or these days solar as well, part of that may be excluded as well. It might be in, it may be in a permit, but equally as well, what we see across the whole place with electricity transmission, and this is overhead, not underground. Overhead is very much around easements because the power company, whoever it is, wants to find access to that land.
So there's an easement over the Crown land for those overhead lines.
Likely, yeah. So and we see that now, Andrew, as well.
And that would probably be the same for underground.
Well, I'm not sure about that yet.
Okay.
But
You'll note that I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, the wind towers are going to be fenced off. So if you issue a permit for grazing, for instance, it could be very well be that the animals are grazing within that area that supposedly is exclusive use for the wind tower.
I can put my hand on my heart and say there have been no discussions around fencing off any of the turbines.
No, I didn't think there would be.
Yeah,
No.
and if in that example too, that when you go and actually look at a turbine base, it's all gravel. So there's no stock grazing in there.
Well, it depends it depends how large a curtilage you're going to
Sure, yeah, I get that.
survey around each turbine too.
So my observation there, and bringing it back to that maximum amount under the Forestry Act, the bigger the fence, the bigger the area, and so a proponent then gets punished, if I use that word, by not if they're putting it out so that they've got exclusive.
But
they won't want to do.
as I understand it, the Pines has a standard area that they require around any turbine, whether it's on private land. I assume that'll probably apply to the forestry, or is it going to be a bigger?
Physical requirements, yeah, well, for fire safety.
Yeah.
And simple, we potentially use the base of the turbine, the gravel area belonging as well, so it's not exclusive use, but.
Exactly.
And so to be quite frank, we have not got definitive this many per hectare, hectares per turbine or anything like that. What we do have is a maximum area of use, and they have to be able to fit everything in.
When will you be in a position to advise that, noting that you will have to know that before the DA's?
We can't issue a permit until we're absolutely sure that these boats or any of the others for a construction operation are going to fit within that defined area. We can't, we're legislatively bound across all those projects. We can't go beyond that.
Okay. You can tell us whether an area occupied by a substation, if it's within the forest, is going to be. One, two, you can tell us that underground power lines, well, at least you should be researching it, because this is affecting 7 councils, is subject to an easement or a permit. And you can tell us that, noting from what the Pines do on private land, and noting fire risks at every area, the intended area to be permitted around, which is to be taken up by a wind turbine, is this.
And so
I would have thought that needs to be at least looked at this stage.
yeah.
And then when the Pines comes back to you and say, with all those parameters, this is the area we will be occupying within your forest, fine. But without that information, it's very hard for us to understand how it's going to move ahead, and it's impossible for you to understand, I would have thought.
We don't understand. No, you're quite right, absolutely.
So when will we likely to understand at least those things?
Well, I would suspect it's going to be in the EIS, because that is
What leads in next year for that detail, like a month?
Yeah. So that's.
When are you talking about next year?
Yeah.
That's right, yeah, that's right. But the other question you had, sorry, Doug, I'm aware you want to ask a question in here as well, to me, yeah. You asked or made the observation about the substation. It wasn't until Andrew just said something there which I'd forgotten about. When a substation is built, no, this is just the way it mechanically works. When a substation is built, more often than not, it's actually Transgrid that takes the ownership of the land under the substation.
So as a state government entity, are they going to be permitted?
No, so, no.
20 hectares, 10, 20 hectares.
You could have several.
No, so to answer this,
To keep it up.
we don't issue a permit for that. That land is actually cut off, surveyed off, and ultimately the land is then owned by Transgrid, not by the Forestry Corporation.
Can I ask?
Transgrid won't pay rates, I take it being a state government.
I don't know the answer to that. I can actually speak for us, but that's, well, I'm just speaking openly there.
Could you research that a bit further for us, please?
No. That will go through with the work that these folks do with how it will all be ultimately presented. They will be able to give that in.
So could you provide us with the information as to whether the substation is likely to be operated by you or Transgrid? When would you know that?
I know that there's the big one that gets cut into the existing line. Transcript will. That's.
Are they going to be smaller? Are they going to be smaller substations?
Collector ones, yeah. And they may be either on private land or on forestry land.
There you boost
They're
it.
still doing that engineering now.
And to answer, Andrew, to answer the broader question too.
Yeah.
There will not be a permit for every turbine, for every piece of asset and the like. When the wind farm is approved, it would be an administrative nightmare to have a permit for each piece of infrastructure. It'll be a wind farm.
Especially with your
construction.
lawyers, speed and cost.
Yeah, no.
Let's go so.
But how then do we get a general valuation? The VG is going to ask, well, you have 250 turbines in your things. How am I going to value that when there's a permit that has no delineation around each of those turbines?
Well, I think there are lots of ways that might be possible, and
So that's what
Gary
we need
talked about.
we need to know the details so we can have the discussion with the valuer general.
Yeah,
I
so
might
the
be able to help you, Kevin.
detail-
Kevin, I might be able to help you with this.
help me out, Frank.
You need.
I'm gonna be able to help you. Councillor Jeffries.
No.
For you, Mr. Mayor, a question, to Councillor Jeffries. I think-
Isabel.
I think we just need to listen to Andrew. We need some information. And I don't think we're not saying we're gonna hang you with it. We're just saying we need some information so we can understand. We can go to the Value General so that we've got a little bit of control and understanding in this process. Otherwise, if you say, look, it'll all become apparent in the EIS, again, not good enough. So we may send you a letter now and just say, these are the things we need.
Well, I think I've asked that in an
You've
email.
already done
It's a
it.
bit hard to get the blueprints when it's not finalised.
Well, there you go.
And that's the thing, I don't have the layout, Frank.
No, but the layout will be soon.
Yeah, it'll be soon, and I can't give you an opinion until actually it's the.
But we'll get that email again and wait for that.
Later.
Wait for the blueprint and then we'll get a question answered.
If I can help out.
Question we go on. Back to our very early discussions of the 0.7.
Yeah.
We've just got in detail.
Yeah.
Do those substations and infrastructure, if they're not on private land, they sit within the forestry land, does that come into that?
Well, I think that should, they use it, and I think rather than I know, so I'll give a non-legal opinion here. For all reasons about that. But, yeah, so if it's a substation and goes to Transgrid, then it's not subject to the Forestry Act, so it won't be subject to.
So they can put more trees down.
So there would be, what we are doing now with all these sorts of things is the 2-for-1 replacement requirement is there, and it's the same with these folks, and we've had the same sort of discussion with other energy providers across the whole state.
But the legislation that went through in 20 was all about
Renewables, yes.
and 0.7.
So the principle, the 0.7, for us, if it's, we can't issue the permit, but if Transgrid use their compulsory acquisition powers, that doesn't apply.
Okay.
So that's where it's separated. Now, again, that's my opinion.
Why don't we invite Transgrid to come and have a meeting and talk to Andrew about how they then apply their side of the business?
Well, I think first have to work out, they will need to know the layout, they will need to know the information from the pines.
Yeah, that's the way. And to qualify you too, Forestry Corporation has no powers of compulsory acquisition, none whatsoever. So, Frank, the observations you're making there from the New England, that was very much around the transmission network. Transmission network here already exists. The 500 kilovolt line sits there.
Not to Mount David. Not to Mount David, I don't believe.
So I'm talking about the 500 through.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist. It does exist.
That's the 1989 file.
That's the one. That's the Balfour Beatty one that went through here all those years ago. So that line can be connected to. There's no compulsory acquisition required by anyone there. Even going through to Mount David, and so the question around that, the Pines have to negotiate access through private property to be able to make that work. And nor does the Pines, nor does PAG, nor does Stromlo, none of us have compulsory acquisition powers. So it is on commercial rates that it must be negotiated. It's not a government come through and say, this is definitely going to happen, we're going to connect it all.
And if I could add to that well-made point, we won't be using Transgrid with compulsory acquisition powers either. We don't need to do that. It'll be commercial arrangements, either with forestry or others.
Councillor.
Yes, question to Andrew, just your modern slavery legislation.
Yes.
I'd like to know, I know the devastation you're causing to the district and people everywhere with these proposals. How are you dealing with the legislation, with your slavery legislation? Do you have any consideration of the people that lives you are destroying overseas for your rare earths, your asbestos workers, your towers? I'd just like to know, and also are you supporting people's lives you're devastating in this district?
Do you know the legislation to your Modern Slavery Act?
Well, I'm just asking a question. Hopefully Andrew will know. Okay.
You should know it if you ask it.
Yeah, all right, no, question,
Hang on,
is he
sorry,
deal?
a question from Andrew.
Yeah, thank you.
We certainly comply with the Modern Slavery Act in Australia. The statement is due end of this month, the annual statement. I sign them off every year. We put that obligation through into our supply chain. We buy it from reputable suppliers who are also members of that. Typically the wind industry, being a renewable energy business, broadly are sustainable, depending which company you deal with. I certainly don't accept any assertion that we're causing harm to people through the Modern Slavery Act. I think that's just false, and I don't accept it.
Right, what about?
Can I just follow on from that, thanks? Is that okay?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, the Modern Slavery Act, they're both state and federal. I think
Federal.
big one.
Federal.
There's both, there's a
Yeah,
state.
there's a federal requirement.
I know, there's a federal requirement, there's a state legislation too. I think what we're saying here is that, you're saying that you comply with all regulations and statements. I looked on the slavery website where everyone has to lodge statements. There wasn't one from TAG. You're saying you're going to lodge
I'll
one.
send you the link if you can find it. No, we've been doing it for the last 3 years.
Okay, good, that'd be great. And with regard to forestry, where they come into it is, they've got a more onerous requirement on them in terms of, in regards to procurement. So state government agencies, and I'll give you an example, if they're buying motor cars, there's a list that you can't buy. You can't buy those brands of cars from, say, China, because there's slavery happening. So same with wind towers, there's a list, and the state government has that list, whereas in terms of TAG, they don't have to comply with procurement requirements, but they have to comply with a statement. No, I'm not, but it's more onerous on state government instrumentalities. That's all I was getting at there. Thank you.
Council has to comply with it as well. We've got batteries and solar panels and light bulbs, so we've all got to comply with it.
Meetings with the ministers, the JO, and I asked the Minister for Business, I think she didn't quite understand the question, but in relation to the pushing the New South Wales government local procurement, and I asked the question as to why there's not a local procurement basis for renewable energy, in particular wind farms, noting that companies in Victoria, etc., have made materials for Vestas and other companies previously. In all materials for these wind farms, the majority being imported, why is a local manufacturing base not being established, in particular for, the towers, the metal towers, etc.
Yep.
Noting how much the New South Wales government is changing its own procurement policy to require an emphasis for local procurement. And I did ask the minister, but I think you were there, Gary, weren't you? And she avoided the question, didn't answer it really. So I'm asking you, I suppose, why is that not possible to establish industries? It'd be great for the Central Tablelands, for instance, or even the Central West, if a manufacturing base could be established by the wind farm companies for at least some of the major components for these wind towers.
Certainly, it's a really worthwhile question. In my 15 years in the industry, in this particular part of the electricity industry, you're right, there has been attempts over time to establish manufacturing, particularly in Victoria. And Victoria has the most progressive policies in this space, and still manufacturers have not been able to make it work. And it'll come with my 15 years experience, the answer of why that is, it's the simple answer. If you could get, if policymakers could agree on bipartisan policy and give stability to the market, then investors, maybe be they private entrepreneurs like orgs over here, or be they the international OEMs, could make investments into the country because they know they have a reliable return on the investment because they have an order book. So when you're facing opposition in communities and political ideology, which investor do you know is going to make an investment into a product when they don't know if the next government comes in is going to change their minds on the likelihood of being built? Okay, so we've had 2 decades of energy as a political football. That's the honest answer to your question. Now, what can we do about it? Let me give you another answer. Tomorrow night, I'm at a function with Tim Ayres, the federal industry minister. If you know his work, he's after the future made in Australia policy. And PAG, together with a few other people, including the OEMs, are trying to find a way to make it work. Because we've got a relative period of policy stability. So there might be a window to do it before a lot of stuff gets built. But it requires a lot of, people of goodwill, who've got good intent. That's why tomorrow night, I'm joining that.
But a lot of, whatever happens now, there's a lot of wind farms going to be built.
Correct.
Especially in,
Correct. Let's get the VPA negotiated, let's get the
Midwest,
planning application, in,
Armadale,
let's get the race.
Tamworth, Walker, all those areas, they're going, and Dubbo, they're going ahead full stream ahead.
Correct.
So there must be a base load of componentry that would justify local procurement.
I couldn't agree more.
What exists now.
There should be. Unfortunately, we are a high labor cost country. That's another reality. And we're a member of the WTO.
Yep.
And by being a member of the WTO, we just can't put punitive tariffs on things to encourage local industry. It has to compete on economics, quality.
President of the United States had, and he's also raised the anti-slavery in relation to putting on 12% on Australia.
I thought you didn't like him.
I don't think it's appropriate what he's done, but he's done it.
I hear you, and I'm trying to contribute to it. So policy stability will help.
But just got a question, for transparency and also understanding. Company correspondence, the one from the 30th of April, I got, I was going to say beaten, I got it thrust into my head as an accountant for many, many years about legal requirements to have certain things included in the letter. And we note the letter emailed to the council on the 30th of April may not comply with Australian law surrounding company correspondence. Information which appears to be omitted on such outward facing correspondence include company name, legal status, ABN, ACN, registered office. When it comes to that, it sort of hits me going, on what authority were you acting? Which entity were you representing? And how can someone rely on advice received? Is there going to be any improvement in that in the future? No?
I'm happy to do whatever you'd like, Councillor.
No, this is what other companies provide council in advice, not someone behind $4 billion project without the name, without the ABN, without the ACN. You say why I couldn't access the modern slavery statement is because I didn't have a name, I didn't have an ABN, which it asked for. All I had was tag, and that came up a hospitality company. I thought, well, that's not what you do. So it's important that the details are given in any correspondence. No?
Sure.
Is that possible?
Sure.
Thank you.
I'll make a comment. I just get the feeling you guys are just fobbing us off.
Can we
I
finish?
really believe that. I know it's some of the things that we're asked for questions after questions and answers after answers, we never get them. And with that answer to that, with respect, you were fobbing us off because we had a legitimate
I think it's going.
anyway.
Councillor, if I could, just on the decommissioning. I know what you said in the answer to the question.
Yes.
However, I think from a community perception, but also, and we've been pushing this, as you know, and also with the minister, that we should have a standard set of guidelines for decommissioning across all wind farm companies so that there's, it's not divide and conquer. And we also should have something that provides security to landholders and the public that if everything goes to water, that these towers will be taken down at the end of their life. And I know we've had discussions on that. Are there ways of moving forward that would provide greater certainty? I know there's been issues about bank guarantees. You don't want to keep bank guarantees in place for the longevity of the project. The moment across proposals to have them in 5 years. But there are better ways to do this where all the wind farm companies get together and agree on a minimum set of guidelines for decommissioning, a period of time including a time frame for decommissioning, so they're not left there for years after, and a means to ensure that if something happens to one of those companies, that the obligation is met, so that it's not placed back on the landholder, or, as I said to the minister, and she did acknowledge that if there's community uproar at the end of this, it'll either be the state government or the local government pointed to, even though we may have no legal obligations because people do not want rusting towers in their backyards. And although we may, so, you know, have we been able to move this forward? I note your comments here, but that's not really what I was hoping that you, I thought we might be looking at a more constructive way moving forward.
It is deja vu, isn't it? Tell me I'm not.
No, it's a very important question. And I've shared with both Gary and the mayor in the past,
Yes,
our efforts to achieve something. So maybe a short update on that.
yes, that's what I.
So we've got a policy proposal that's met twice with Federal Energy Minister's office, with Tony Meyer, who you quoted earlier, and Australian Energy Infrastructure Commissioner, the Clean Energy Council, and also with the Prime Minister's office, actually. And we've made the point that industry has a ready-made solution here that we've drafted.
Yeah.
Clean Energy Council wants to work on it with us this year. The Federal Energy Minister's office has been a little bit distracted by a war in Iran this year. But for that, we would have probably been making progress on it as an industry. So I can't promise it'll happen in 26, but probably before this project gets built, I'd like to think we can get it in place. Queensland is making noises about doing something on their own. The Liberal Nationals here have introduced a bill from opposition to do something. We think it makes sense to do it federally, so that everyone has the same standards.
Yes.
And so the ambition is to get it federal, and making personal advocacy to make that happen. And just to give you some comfort, or some hope in that one, I shared that on this project, we instituted together with Gavin, a policy of neighbor insurance. So whereby we cover the neighbors to the project should they damage the project. Tony Meyer, who Councillor O'Connor quoted a moment ago, is within the next week or so, maybe 2 weeks, going to issue a national policy proposal for that. That TAG Energy has been the single largest advocate for, in the only developer in the room advocating that we can do it. And it all comes from our engagement here in Oberon, that we've actually decided this actually makes a lot of good sense. We should be doing it anyway. And when Tony Meyer makes his, no, it's not TAG Energy's thing, it's his, he wanted it. We just happened to have done it, so he got in touch with us. And when he, that's a national proposal, it'll be voluntary. He's already made a position statement on it, the actual proposal is coming out. And we're very proud of the fact that behind the scenes, we've been advocating for this to happen. And I think the decommissioning is next on the list.
So we've been pushing the Minister of Environment, Penny Sharp, state level. And she actually, I think, acknowledged the other day, there probably needed to be something done, but her major issue is the recycling of solar cells, solar panels.
Yeah, which is
Which she said is a
worthwhile thing to be done.
She did acknowledge that, yeah.
It's a long answer to say there's a solution in the pipeline, but it takes sort of energy outside of the day-to-day business to try and push it through and make it happen.
Thanks, Andrew. I do welcome what you just said, and with all these meetings we've had, I've listed our TAG's position in each of our meetings regarding decommissioning, and it's quite a interesting list to read through because of how the change, how you move from one to the other. In March, you said nearly identical thing to what you just said there, nearly identical. I could read it out. And you said this is going to happen soon. But the problem we've got, and particularly given that you're saying that you're the major advocates for this, the problem we've got is that right at the moment, the industry, yourself included, are saying now we're only going to fund it towards the end of its life. So if that's the case, we've got a period of 17, 18, 19 years where it's $1 billion, whatever that cost is totally unfunded. And let's let me finish this because it's totally unfunded. So we're sailing along with the towers up with $1 billion potential liability sitting there unfunded. I mean, that is a risk that our community and our council cannot bear. Sorry, let me finish, because that's what you do, you try to help. But
you keep saying
now what you need to understand is we need some certainty with this. We've been discussing this, as I'll send you this statement. I mean, you can go back through all the transcripts. we need some certainty. It's great that you're advocating something, and that's what you said in March 25, the same words.
There's no
But we-
project yet, Frank.
But we need certainty, because how can our council, our community move forward? This is the biggest thing within our community, the fear that we're going to be left with these towers totally unfunded. And that, I guess, when you reflect, and if you're in business like a few of us are, we know that the potential is they won't be funded. As the developer at Rydell said, when he was talking to Paul Toole, he finally admitted, he said, Paul Toole vouched for this, he said, Paul Toole said, if you're not going to do it to the 17th year, why don't you put up a bond? He said, if we had to finance it, the project is unviable, okay? So that's what we're saying. And it's good that you go back to the March 25 meeting and say exactly the same. What you said was Pines are advocating for a national scheme. National scheme is more efficient than a bank bond, and we'll be getting back to you shortly. Now, we need more certainty than that. And I'll just go back to the first thing you told us, which really is an account, just sort of, annoys you a little bit. Council should have confidence as TAG has included the decommissioning costs in the project's financial analysis. Well, if that's the case, put the bond up. If you've got a financial analysis that shows that it's all going to work for you, put the bond up, or put a proportion of the bond up as Paul Toole has submitted to the New South Wales government. Thank you.
The answer will be the same.
Thanks.
So the answer, first of all, is in respect to the forestry's made statements that it is comfortable with the securitization of the decommissioning obligations.
Securitization.
So be it a bank guarantee, be it a fund, be it whatever, for decommissioning.
So you'll be putting up
So under our commercial arrangements, forestry has stated that they are comfortable that they are protected as the landowner.
And explain how, because you've never said this before.
Because it's a matter between the parties. It's a commercial matter between the parties.
And we're the community. We'd like to know a little bit more detail.
I understand that, but I'm not allowed
You don't have.
under our agreement to just, it'd be like, whoever leases the building over
So
there.
you've got
Explaining
You want to know
their-
their rental
you've
agreement.
got a securitization agreement.
No, I said,
What do you got?
our decommissioning obligations.
Yes.
Are secured under our agreement.
And you said securitized, sorry, you did.
This is a word.
He said
being
he's happy with
Excuse
the
me, Councillor Hayne. I'm
securitization,
talking this.
but I'm just saying what he
Excuse me.
said.
Councillor Hayden,
No, I'm serious. He needs
Councillor
to
O'Connor
pick
is
something
asking a
out.
question. Come on. Yeah,
He's
okay.
not asking, he's
I
dictating.
suppose the question I have is very simple. I don't understand why that part of the agreement would not be disclosed to allay the community concern
Commercial
that we might
complex.
be left with rusting towers in pine forests when they're privatised between now, if they were privatised in the next 35 years.
The ownership of forestry has no bearing on what the relationship is.
It's in the agreement, but a new person who is not a government entity may not be as concerned about the decommissioning as a government entity would be.
Well, if it was on their land and they're liable for it, I'm sure they're quite sure, and they'll be looking at those securitization arrangements that we have in between us. Now, I can just say, and we're not going to disclose together commercial arrangements that the parties have come to, but I can tell you that the New South Wales government entity is comfortable with what it asks. Now, then to go to the next level, I wish I could do it today. I genuinely wish I could give it to you today, but it's going to take time. We're a federated country. I have to get through the industry. We have to get through the states and sure. We have to get then through the energy minister, who's been a little bit preoccupied this calendar year. So I commit to you, we're going to have a red hot go at getting something that addresses, more than a red hot go. I've shared the document with the council in confidence to show us the draft, how we're going to do it. And the issue, Mr. O'Connor, Councillor O'Connor, that you raise about making sure that there's coverage throughout, the policy proposal does that in an economic way, that it doesn't increase the cost of electricity. Because we got to balance two things here. We got to balance the cost of electricity by not having unnecessary bank guarantees sitting out in everyone's state for 30 years, completely uneconomic and inefficient. And we've got to keep the cost of electricity down by not having that, but yet we have to give the community the confidence and the fail-safe that should any bad event happen, they would not, the landowner, including forestry or anybody else, will not be left holding the bag.
That's all well and good, but I go back to the facts. The
That's
facts
the answer
are,
to your question.
no, it's not. The facts are that we need a copy of that agreement where we
Well, I
know.
apologize, that's not coming.
Okay,
So
That's
we
fine.
can put it in writing, you put it on your list.
but what I'm
We're
saying.
not providing a commercial
What I'm
confidence
saying then-
agreement.
what I'm saying then is, you may laugh, but what I'm saying then is, for 17 years, that liability is totally unfunded.
I can just, I don't know where 17 comes from, that's your word.
Because that's the word you've used towards the
That
end
was
of the
some other
project.
person.
No, that was.
You said it was the other.
Other
No,
person.
no, two separate
I
matters.
guarantee I didn't say 17.
No, you said towards the end of the project. That's when you'll start funding it. That was about 2 meetings ago, towards the end of the project.
I think it was I think 5 years out from the end of the
5
project.
end out,
Put the
yeah.
bank guarantee in place.
Yeah, we've got landowner agreements in place now that are in both in negotiation and ready to be signed that have different arrangements. And those are commercial matters between the parties. And what I'm trying to do nationally is even better than all of that.
And I understand what you're proposing. What I think you've got with forestry is the same across the industry. Whether you go to Walker and talk to them, those developers are doing the same. They're funding it towards the end. But the
Yeah.
problem with that is, as I said, you can sell the project to a body that's not as financially capable. Things can go wrong. We've got a liability sitting there, totally unfunded. And if you go back to our wind farm plan, our development control plan, the top of the agenda item is that there has to be a bond. The top of the agenda item in our development control plan is that there must be a bond,
So that
and that protects our community.
the landowner is the one that needs to be protected because they have the
That's
line.
Our community does.
Yeah,
The landowner.
landowner.
Yeah, but
The landowner.
if the $1 billion isn't funded, who will pay the $1 billion?
Well, it's not funded, the landowner, unfortunately, but it is funded. That's the point. That's the point. And
Anyway, it's been fun
So-
going in circles, Gary.
a little bit, yeah, and I suggest we move on from this topic.
It is, but it's clear that you understand that there is some.
Yeah, and there's a way to do it economically, and we're trying to get there.
And I think the answer to the question is we look forward to seeing your advocacy in this space, because I have seen the document, as has the mayor, and there is a federal approach that they're looking to go down that path, and I think you've been reasonably clear in that.
And if we don't get it, so
I thank you for your time.
thank you.
I will make one last statement, because I can't lose in this one, is that I recognise the value that the state has put on a VPA and a per megawatt cost.
That's a minimum.
I will note that it's also a minimum. I'll continue the fight with the state about making sure that our community is recognised. I go back to them and say, you have a number of private landowner agreements that you'll put in place that support value add towers or developments. And I'd like to see any VPA that is a per megawatt costing be matched to the community versus what that is to those landowner agreements you have privately. If that's less, then I'll go to the minimum. If it's more, I've got somewhere to work with,
I think
which is why I can't lose in having to make.
That's what's valuable to neighbourhood neighbours and to the hosts as well, I think.
And when we come to talk about VPAs, I know that you're going to say that this is the guideline put out by the state. I can actively tell you that I've made substantial comments to the state saying I will be making the same comments with them.
Question?
Yeah.
Are you asking if the 1,050, the guideline, are you asking if that applies to forestry as well as private landowners? Is that the question?
No. So you have a number of signed up
Yes,
landowners
yes,
that you have agreements with them.
yes.
Previously, you have given indication on what that value per year is.
Do you mean like the lease payment for the land?
How much
I'm
the
talking
land
about
is.
your agreement that
So
you
you
have with the lease.
Which is typically a lease
So
payment.
you have, yes, you have neighbourhood agreements and you have host agreements.
Yes.
Right, you have both those.
Yep.
Now, if you look at what you pay those on a yearly basis, there have been some standards set as to what that amount should be as compared to the amount you pay for councils and community benefit.
Yeah, but we're using their land. In the case posts,
Yeah,
they're giving up land, you know, and providing that service to us as a project.
but we've seen
Oh, yeah.
informed by other councils that there should be a percentage amount. And the amounts that you're paying per megawatt hour for your,
This is the New South Wales government guideline.
it's guidelines and minimum. And I asked the question the other day of Penny Sharp and her advisor, these are minimum. And she said, yes, we're talking about legislating this. And I said, so it's going to be legislated as minimum amounts? Yes, that's what we were told.
Sure. And precisely
Minimum.
why we've doubled it.
No,
Would be
no,
that.
no, we're gonna go back to that letter that you sent.
Well, we say.
That was a very poor letter. It overstated the
Okay,
amounts.
that's enough.
And not just three.
Sorry,
Frank,
I've
that's enough.
gone too far back into it, but I think you understand where I'm coming from. If I, or if council needs to.
Can I make really plain language, Gary?
You make it
You're saying you
plain.
don't agree with the guideline is enough for council. Is that what you're saying?
That's what we're saying.
You're
I'm
saying
saying
you
that
have
that is a
something else in
minimum,
mind.
because the thing is, Andrew, is we haven't ascertained
Yes.
what that social, economic and
Oh, we might,
economic.
that's a very important point to clarify. So on top of all this is the obligation, whatever comes out of the planning process. Like, for example, if we impact a road or, I don't know, water supply, whatever impacts are, the project has to make those whole. And so we have not included those in any of our correspondence, other than the obligation to pay those,
Sure.
because they're not benefits. They're gonna keep whole.
And what I'm saying is that at some point in time, we're gonna have a conversation about a voluntary planning agreement. And I'm giving you a starting point because
Right.
it's certainly something that my community is saying that we have to look at that long term.
So together, you've doubled it nearly through, engagement with us.
Andrew, I
I
think
think we've understood.
the final question,
Yeah.
but I think what our general manager's saying is what Tony Marr said, excuse me, councillor, what Tony Marr said, and I'll just quote. There needs to be a comprehensive cumulative impact assessment. That's what our general manager's saying. You know,
And that
the
happens.
minimum, it's the minimum amount to better measure the renewable energy developments that are affecting communities and residents. And that's what our general manager's saying. That's a minimum amount. We need to ascertain the impacts to understand what the real figure should be. That's Tony Marr's words.
I look forward to that continued conversation. Once again, Fines and Forestry, thank you.
Thank you.
You always turn up and you answer the hard questions.
Yeah.
You absolutely get put through the ringer in terms of which our community is expecting. But I appreciate appreciate the value that you provide in that space. We'll continue to talk. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Oh,